And I will excuse Councilmember Tran as he's out of the country. And to the far left, we have Council President Linda Kochmeyer. We have, to my left, Jack Walsh on the committee, and to my right, Susan Honda. And is anybody online viewing? Is Lydia or anybody else? Okay. Okay, we'll get moving right into the first thing, which is item number 2, public comment. Is there any public comment? Anything online? No? Okay, we'll move to committee business. Does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up before we start our meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on to item A, approval of the minutes from February 3, 2025.
All right. I move to forward the proposed oh, hold on, that's the wrong one. Okay, all right. I move to approve the February 3 minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Now we'll move to item B, approval of to submit the NPDES annual report and management plan. Mr. Dew.
All right, good evening, council members. My name is Kevin Dew. I'm the Water Quality Program Supervisor for Public Works. I am here asking approval to submit our annual report, our stormwater annual report to Department of Ecology as required by our permit by Department of Ecology. And so here just asking authorization to submit our annual report. And so our NPDES permit is broken into 10 sections. We started a new permit term mid last year and it's effective till mid 2029. And I'll just briefly go over each of these sections in the following slides. We have stormwater planning, which is our making sure we have a stormwater planning program to inform and assist development of policies and strategies to protect receiving waters. Some examples include our stormwater management action plan for the West Halibos, our low impact development code, our stormwater management comprehensive plan, and our stormwater management plan updates to ecology, letting them know how we're going to fulfill all their permit requirements year by year. We have section 2, which is public education and outreach, building general awareness with the community, affecting behavior change to eliminate behaviors that cause adverse stormwater impacts. And some examples of this include Storming the Sound with Salmon program, where we partner with Federal Way Public Schools, tabling at public events, Farmers Market, Kids Day, Hooked on Fishing. We have the volunteer curb marking, litter pickup events, and then we got the Stream Team, Spill Kit outreach programs, and most recently, our Adopt a Drain program. We have 3, which is public involvement and participation, making sure we provide opportunities for the public to provide feedback on our annual report and stormwater management plan. We do this through our website and public meetings such as LUTC and council. We have section 4, which is MS4 mapping and documentation, making sure we map all of our stormwater infrastructure, making sure all the pipe size, length, materials, location, public to private connections. And then most recently, we're going to have to document our tree canopy coverage and all of our right-of-way and public parcels. And section 5 is illicit discharge detection and elimination program, a program to eliminate illicit discharges into the city's stormwater infrastructure. We do this through our code and through our training for field staff, where they can find these, report it to the respective staff who will do enforcement as needed. We have section 6, which is controlling runoff from construction sites of new and redevelopment, making sure that all these construction sites aren't polluting into our stormwater infrastructure. So our construction inspectors, they do inspections, they review their erosion and sediment control plans, and making sure they follow the King County Stormwater Design Manual, Pollution Prevention Manual, and the Federal Way Development Standards. We have section 7, which is the new section of the permit. This permit term is a stormwater management of existing development. Implement a program to reduce stormwater discharges into waters of the state. And basically, based on the population of your jurisdiction, you have to do a certain amount of programs and projects. And that must be implemented or fully funded by March 31st, 2028. Examples include retrofit projects, enhance or focus SMAP programs, street sweeping, pipeline cleaning, property acquisition, restoration projects. And if the program or permit already requires any of these, we have to go beyond what the permit requires us to count towards that section. And then there's Section 8, which is source control program for existing development. And this, in contrast to our illicit discharge detection and elimination program, this is more a preventative program. We go to businesses, provide technical assistance, provide best management practices to prevent illicit discharges from occurring in the first place, so we don't have to do enforcement and have pollution going into the storm system. You have Section 9, which is operations and maintenance, a permit section to require maintenance of all of our stormwater infrastructure according to the King County Stormwater Design Manual and Pollution Prevention Manual. We maintain over 22,000 structures and facilities and 480 miles of pipes and ditches. And lastly, we have the monitoring and assessment section, which is either you can pay into a regional fund, which is the SAM, which is Stormwater Action Monitoring, or implement your own monitoring program. We pay into the regional fund, as most other jurisdictions do as well. And options here is either approve the annual report, as the mayor recommends, or to not approve. And are there any questions regarding the NPDES
Councilmember
permit?
Walsh?
Just a quick question on item 7, which was the new one.
Yes.
With those things that it requires, are we already doing most of those and just need to document it, or are they new things that we'll need to start doing?
We've actually done quite a bit already. We're assigned 16.3 equivalent acres. They have a calculation for this. We already did half of them, and so we just need eight more acres to go. They just have to be structural. We completed the non-structural section. We need to do the structural section. So yeah, I think we're on the way to fulfill those acreage.
Will it need to add much to our budget in order to fully implement it?
I believe with our current stormwater fees, I believe we can fulfill those retrofits.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
I was just going to ask that when the little fish go into the Hylobus, if we could be invited,
Oh, yeah, sure thing. Yeah,
that would be
absolutely.
awesome, thank you.
I have a question. This report seems, we do this every year, right?
Every year. Yes, sir.
And how much of it actually really changes?
The report, most of it depends what questions that college ask us to answer, but most of it stays yes, and because we do fulfill all the requirements as needed. And only thing that changes is really new requirements that come up.
So I know we do this, and it's always a great report, but it seems like a lot of busy work for staff to do. I mean, does somebody actually read this when it gets to wherever it goes?
Yeah, I'm assuming you're saying actually put the report together, not present the report to LUTC, right?
Well, no, I think the report's great. I just we've been doing this for years and years and years. and-
Correct. So it gets them into Ecology. Ecology reads it enough that they give us comments every year. And then it does get reviewed by various advocacy groups. So like Puget Sound Keepers comes in typically every couple of years with questions to us. Sierra Club comes in every once in a while and asks us like pointed questions to the point that they are reading it. I do not know how in-depth regular, I use that term loosely, property owners that are not interested in this are reading it.
Okay,
But it is read by some.
by somebody, okay. Okay,
I have another question.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So what relationship would we have with Lake Haven in doing this report? Do they do a similar report?
They have a different stormwater, NPDES permit. They have a wastewater permit from Ecology. And the only time we work with them is when they spill sewage into our system. So,
Yeah, they
Does that
have
happen
different,
often?
happens more recently lately, but I think hopefully less in the future.
Okay.
they have a different piping system,
Yeah, their structure's old, yeah.
yeah.
Council President?
Well, sometimes they discharge into Puget Sound, and sometimes it's an illegal discharge, and then they have to clean that up, yeah. By the way, Chair, I think I saw Councilmember Dawson online. I'm not sure.
Okay, I asked.
I'm here.
Okay, well, make sure you say something if you want to add, because I can't see you raising your hand yet. Okay,
Will do. Thank you so much.
thank you. And oh, there comes in Councilmember McDaniel. So we have a full house tonight. Okay, do I have a motion?
I move to forward the proposed submittal of the 2024 annual report and 2025 stormwater management program plan to to the March 18, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we'll move on to goods and services agreement with Arlington Recycle Warehouse.
Good evening, council members, chair. My name is Rebecca Kovar. I'm the contract coordinator for environmental services and public works. And the matter before you today is whether or not we will approve a contract for Arlington Recycle Warehouse to do mattress collection events in the city. Give me one moment. Okay. So the question before you is, should City Council approve the goods and services contract with Arlington Recycle Warehouse to provide recycling event services? And some background information. The city has historically invested in recycling, collection, and diversion for residents. The goal of this is to keep products out of the landfill, which will preserve the life of the landfill, which is coming to the end of its life. We have noted that mattresses provide a definite barrier, especially to people without cars or vehicles to transport them to appropriate dumping places. And we have had some issues with these things being dumped on the street or up on the highway. Our collection events are designed to reduce the number of illegally dumped items, which is great because that then frees up our staff to take care of other right-of-way issues as opposed to going out and collecting the mattresses. Mattresses are very hard to dispose of because they are large, they're heavy, and they have multiple parts. So if they're taken to the landfill, they simply get dumped. The difference with Arlington is that they can take them apart into recyclable pieces, which means fewer material makes it to the landfill. The Washington State Legislature is currently considering a bill that would require mattress recycling, and therefore they wouldn't be accepted at the transfer stations. Now, part of that is probably going to be producer responsibility, but those programs have a tendency to take at least 3 years to get up and running to the point where they're effective. The agreement with Arlington Recycle Warehouse, which is not just for mattresses, but they will also collect CFC appliances or other large items as determined by the city. So we will agree on the items to be collected at an event. They are the only mattress recycler currently operating in the region. And all of the costs for all of these events are covered by grants that we get from King County and the Department of Ecology. Questions?
We'll start with Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. So Waste Management has a program where they will pick up bulky items from customers. Is a mattress considered a bulky item?
It is.
So then would Waste Management then take this to where it could be recycled at Arlington?
No, they simply take them to the landfill.
So if the bill that you talk about is passed and a landfill can't accept a mattress, then would we or would Waste Management come up with a way that they would still pick up mattresses from homes and then take them to where they could go?
I am not certain if they have no way to dispose of it because they do not have a specific mattress recycling program, then I think they would stop picking them up. But I would have to actually, we'd actually have to negotiate that.
We might want to start, if the bill passes and we have time to work out a deal to make sure that it's still something that serves our customers.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So my question is, this is a $50,000 cost, or up to, I believe?
Yes.
And $300 for each time we have them pick these up or have a place to pick them up. So that $300, that covers, in Arlington, which is a long ways away, they basically drive a truck down here somewhere, park it, and then people have to stick these in their cars to get them there?
That is correct. We actually had such a collection event in December, and they collected over 200 mattresses.
From Federal Way, 200?
From Federal Way alone, only in Federal Way. We partner with South King Tool Library for a lot of our events,
Okay.
so people know where to go. We are also talking to Arlington about the potential for doing curbside collection events. It would have to be all arranged on one day and pre-approved. So we're looking into their ability to do that, and they are looking to expand their operations into South King County. So we would very much like to already be on their contract list.
And the 50K, it comes, you said, is all grants, and it doesn't come any out of our
Yes,
budget at all?
That is correct.
So this is King County and Ecology and whoever
King County
else
and the
gives us
Department
gives us up to 50,000, or
They give
What
us
if-
a great deal more than that.
what's that?
They give us a great deal more than that.
Okay, but what if I had this debate with my wife, how many mattresses can be picked up in Federal Way in a year? And she says
I
a
can-
lot.
I can actually answer that question.
Yeah, please.
We used to do a mattress voucher program
Mm-hmm.
where we had a company that would pick them up prearranged at your home, and we paid for the voucher costs. And we did between 100 and 150 every year,
Every
every year. It was very, very popular.
Okay, but-
And in a lot of cases, folks in multifamily housing did not take advantage of that because of the difficulty in getting to their particular place.
Right, okay. And so, just so I know, the $300 per trip or
Right.
thing, and we get 50 grand, is it, you divide 300 by 50 grand, and that's how many we can have?
No, the 300 is the cost to arrive at the event. They are still going to charge us for
Oh, how much are they gonna charge per
the
mattress?
mattress. It depends on weight. It's all done by weight.
How much per weight? How much per pound?
That I don't have in front of me, but I can
I
certainly
was-
email it to you.
I mean, I'm only asking just for 50,000. and
Our
you-
last event cost us, I believe, 1,600.
oh, So you can do a lot of these things for
Yes,
50,000.
and we can do different kinds of events. So they will pick up other furniture, they will pick up CFC appliances, which are covered by our Has Waste grant. And we do not have them pick up electronics because that does have we already have a program in the state for
Okay.
that.
Okay, thank you, Councilman President.
Well, I love the idea of a voucher so that they come and pick it up at the address.
Unfortunately, the organization that did that for us abruptly stopped doing mattress recycling. They were in Tacoma, and they abruptly stopped in July of 2023. So we do not currently have a system where we can do that, but Arlington is open to the idea. We would have to negotiate the practicalities.
Well, it'd really be interesting if you could negotiate something with a junk hauler or somebody who would do that, because a lot of people have no way of getting a mattress from their home to a pickup area.
That's why we're looking into
Nor could they
a
pick it
voucher
up to-
program.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
would set a day and say, okay, this is the day, and have our route all set out beforehand. So people would have to tell us, yes, I have a mattress to pick up.
Oh, that is part of your program you're talking
That
about?
we are trying, we are
Oh, good.
working on that program now. That's a program we're hoping to build with
Perfect.
Arlington.
Thank you.
Councilmember Daniel?
Yeah, real quick, you had mentioned there's a grant. Is this a grant that we currently have, or is this one we're filling out and trying
We
to?
currently do have, yes.
Okay, and when does this grant, I guess, when do we have to request the grant funding again? Is it after this cycle then for this project?
Actually, it will overlap that. The grants that we get from Ecology in King County are not competitive grants. They are grants that are awarded to us based on the size of our city.
Do you know if there's, I know there's a budget, where people are trying to squeeze budget. Do you know if this grant or this area of money that we're receiving, will that be part of any of the squeeze coming in the near future?
Not to the best of my knowledge. The grant funds are allotted to us, and we determine how to use them in the way that is best for our residents. It's most convenient for them.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Lydia?
Go ahead,
worry.
Lydia.
Yeah, is this income-based?
No,
So any resident could actually get a voucher to have their mattress hauled?
right now we only have events set up, but if we do a voucher
Right.
program, it's anyone.
Okay, great, thank you.
That prompts one last question I have. So we actually have two programs. One, the waste management, because I've used that, where they'll pick up a mattress and just throw it away in the,
It's very nice.
and it's great. Or we have this one where we can go to, they can drag it down to someplace and it gets recycled. Do we pay the same for waste management to do it as these people? Do we have 50,000 in the budget that,
No, Waste
How is that?
Management will charge us $35 per mattress.
waste
If-
management does?
Yes, if we could get them to do a weekend event, which is
No, but-
not necessarily the
Well, they do it
case.
once, don't they do it once a year? I mean, they came
They
by
do,
my house.
and that
took
is
one
only
away.
for single-family residents. That program does not apply to anyone in a multifamily housing. It is only single-family residents who get bulky item pickup.
Yeah, so there's two separate programs I think we're talking about here. One is the bulky item pickup, which is one time per year, one item. So
Right.
if you want that to be a mattress,
Could be
it
a
can be.
mattress.
If you want it to be a sofa, it can be that, or take your choice of whatever other big things you have. That is only, as Rebecca said, for single-family houses though, so multifamily, commercial, it doesn't apply to any of that.
Yep.
We have also in the past, when we did the huge recycling events down at Wild Waves, Waste Management would be there, and for that, it was $35 or $37 per mattress that was dropped off, that the city paid to Waste Management for them to put in the trash for us on those cases. This would effectively be a parallel program where they are recycled with a different vendor. So if a resident calls and puts it out as a bulky item pickup, that's their prerogative, they certainly can. If they get a voucher and it gets recycled, that's their prerogative too. But if they do the recycling, it doesn't count as their bulky item. So effectively, residents can get both, for lack of a better term.
Got it.
And
Okay.
just to clarify, it is 3 large items and
Or-
up to 15 bags of trash for the bulky item pickup.
Okay,
Which is very
I didn't
nice.
want to confuse the public. It's
Yeah.
3 large items.
okay. Okay, Councilmember President.
Well, I think the problem is if they pass the bill in Olympia that says no mattresses in landfill, that precludes Waste Management from picking up your mattress.
Right.
Yes.
Which-
So
which
then
could
we're
be
back
3
to
years from now.
Arlington.
That's one of the reasons why we want to have the contract in place before legislation passes.
So that, yeah, that way they won't raise the price because you have to, right? Okay, Councilmember Walsh, oh, excuse me. Councilmember Hahn.
Thank you. So when we recently bought a mattress, it was either $50 or $100 for the company to take it away. Might have been $100. And I didn't ask what they do with it when they took it away. As a city, to encourage recycling for businesses that deliver mattresses and remove them at a cost to the consumer, could we require that they recycle them?
Well, that's actually what the legislation is going to do. It's a producer responsibility legislation for mattress companies.
As a city, could we put a cap on how much a company would charge to take it away?
That I don't know.
Because it's, we were charged a lot more than what, if we would have called Waste Management, but, who wanted to drag it out to the curb in the rain? So,
Okay,
All right.
you got a motion there, Mr. Walsh?
I move to forward the proposed agreement to the March 18, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we get to spend lots of money for asphalt overlay, right?
oh, yeah.
Hello.
Got some big numbers,
Yes, really big numbers, yeah.
but, asphalt's worth it.
Here we go. All right, I'm John Strong, I'm a civil engineer here, and this is for the approval to award for the 2025 asphalt overlay. Policy question, should we authorize staff to award the 2025 asphalt overlay to Icon, who is the lowest responsive bidder? We got 4 bids, February 19th. Icon won by a good, probably $700,000 from the whoever was second. This right here is how much money we have. From our revenues, we have, from our 116 fund and our 102 fund, our MVT, our Lake Haven, our swim money, and our REAP money, we have a total of $4.65 million. So we had a lot more of that on the schedule. We've got, over $7 million, so we had to cut a few schedules or push them to next year. We decided we were going to keep Campus Highlands East, Scarborough, Emberwood, South 369th. Scarborough and South 369th were both pushed from last year's overlay. And we're gonna push Campus Highlands West, 12th Avenue Southwest, and 18th Avenue South. So the total that we'll be awarding is 3.8 million, roughly. These are the pictures of the maps that we are awarding. If you guys, want to remember, I have them bigger in the later of the PowerPoints if you want them blown up. And these are the three that we're not awarding, or not, we're dropping. So estimated expenditures, we have $200,000 for design, the $3.8 million for construction, and a 9% contingency of $342,000, and construction management inspection, roughly $300,000. So that gives us that 4.65, which is the same as our revenue, so we would have zero difference. Options considered, award the 2025 asphalt overlay project to Icon for $3,800,000, $807,821, and approve a 9% contingency of $342,179 for a maximum contract amount of $4,150,000. This is the mayor's recommendation. Option 2, reject the bids and provide us with direction. Any questions?
We have lots of questions. Councilmember Honda.
Thank you. So the solid waste utility tax is to pay for resurfacing in neighborhoods.
Yes, residential's, yep.
And it looks like there were 3 neighborhoods that were taken off the list. Is that because there's not enough money in that fund? Or how much money is in that fund, and are we using it all, or are we banking it and not using it all?
We're using all of that fund. And most of the schedules we have on that are recommended forward are also residential. So we're still hitting that 80% threshold. It's just some of those, 12th Avenue is an arterial, 18th Ave is arterial as well. So it's actually only Campus Highlands West that we're cutting that's a residential.
And is there funding left in the solid waste utility tax fund to do Campus Highlands?
No.
No? So at the end of every year, it goes down to 0 and then it builds up again?
We get carry forward, leftovers from previous overlays. That's already taken into consideration with this funding right here. Are roughly, we dipped into the contingency of 2024's overlay a little bit, but we'll have a few $100,000 left over, and that's all calculated already for our revenues.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just a quick kind of irrelevant question that probably doesn't really matter, but most of the time the contingency is 10%, this one's 9%. Why that percent difference? That's how much money we had, so we cut it.
Because we wanted one more schedule.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That's what I suspected.
We were this
but anyway.
close with 10%.
So,
It was like,
the overlay, historically, we do cut the contingency a little bit.
Okay.
It's not new construction where we're going in and digging up a road for the most
Okay.
part, where we're going to run into lots of stuff underground we don't know about. We're
Okay, makes sense.
oversimplified. We're just milling off the road and putting it back, so there's a little bit lower risk. So we have a higher risk tolerance.
Sounds fine, just, so.
Yeah, it's to make the numbers work to get another schedule in there.
Councilmember McDaniel.
Yeah. What is the determining factor for which ones were recommended and which ones were not recommended?
that's just something that we went in as a department, and Desiree and EJ, we all just came together and figured out what's best. To go through them individually, Scarborough and South 39th have been pushed. Scarborough's been pushed for a couple years because it's had complications with it. So those two we have to do. And Emberwood, Lake Haven just went in there and kind of ripped it all up, assuming that we were going to come in and overlay it. So they kind of did a shoddy patchwork. So we want to make sure to go back and do that one. So don't leave that in bad shape for another year. And then it just came down to we needed a big residential schedule, and we had enough for Campus Highlands East and not West.
Okay. And then when we look at these, do you guys use the scoring system for the roads as part of the determination
Yes,
too?
yeah. And 12th Avenue Southwest is a better one, you know, it's like a higher score. So that was another reason why we didn't even really, we can push that one next year, it won't be too big of an impact.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I've seen the shoddy work, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, my question is, when the bidder made their bid, and it was for 7 million plus, or, are they getting squeezed because we cut it in half and they just agree to it, or, I mean, if I'm putting a bid together and I'm thinking it's 100 widgets and it's only 50, the price is usually different.
Yeah, so I mean, this is pretty much the standard way most cities do this work. And we do put in the bid documents that, you know, we have limited funding and we will award as many schedules as we can, but make no promise that we'll award all of them. And basically, they need to be prepared to only execute on one if that's where the funding comes in. So, I mean, certainly, I think all of us would love to see the three that are on that bottom list be on the top list and award all of them. But, you know, we're budget constrained with what we can do with the overlay. So, you know, it's pretty clear to all the bidders that we will be selecting based on the pricing.
Well, the only reason I asked the question is, I'm okay with this is what we're gonna do, but if I was bidding and I saw Campus Highland East and Campus Highlands West, which are mobilization is probably a lot easier than jumping around to different places, my bid might be lower than if I knew there was only gonna be one. And so that's why I'm asking the question. Are we-
Agreed. The mobilization it's not tiny, but it's small compared to the tonnage of asphalt on all of these.
Okay.
So your point is well taken, but with these schedules, it's not static work for the most part. It's a moving operation anyway. Just you're paving in a neighborhood. It's going to move every day. They never
Okay.
park the same machines in the same place twice.
Yeah, and since the bid's very specific and lets them know that we can elect to choose one or
Okay.
more or any combination, savvy bidders are going to take that into account.
Okay, see, Councilmember McDaniel, you have another comment?
Yeah, I have one follow-up comment. I had sent an email out asking about the shortness of read being an issue with projects. Does this have anything to do with not having the fund with read being less than what we expected last year?
No.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Thanks. You mentioned Emberwood, can't say that, had utility work done
Yes.
and needs to be repaved. Did the utility, are they putting any money into this repavement
We make
project?
agreements with Lake Haven that they have to go and they have to repair the road. You know, they have to leave it in a state. But we don't require them to overlay the road after they do the work for these big projects, because we tell them if they can get it done before we're in there, we're gonna overlay it anyways. You know, why make them do it and spend all that money? So it's kind of a
Oh,
mutual.
I thought we actually had them pay a portion of the repaving when they did utility work.
We have them pay for all their, when we adjust their utilities, they pay us back for all that. So anytime that our contract goes out there and adjust their utility back up to grade, they pay us back.
Okay, thank you.
But an add-on question on that. If that utility work hadn't been done in this area, would that have changed our selection?
No, that utility work was done because we were overlaying the road.
Yeah, well,
So,
I drive through there, I know where it is.
yeah, so we work with Lake Haven fairly closely on the overlay program, and we tell them, like, they already know the roads that we're proposing for next year. And they basically go out and inspect their systems. And it's one of those, they obviously need to restore the trench and come bring it back up to grade appropriately. But kind of the partnership that we have with them is if they go out and inspect, find problems, they need to restore the trenches, but we don't make them grind off the entire road and repave it, because we're intending to do it next year, and it's in all of our benefit if they go
Yeah.
fix their pipes that are under the road. If they go into a road, we do have examples in the past where there's a road, they say, hey, our system's really in poor condition in this tangent road. If we go in and fix that, can we add that to the overlay program? And in that case, they do pay. We typically use our contractor because we can get better pricing, but they pay the cost.
Okay, great. Councilmember Walsh?
Yes, I move to forward option 1 to the March 18, 2025 City Council consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you. Have a good night.
And Desiree, I guess you're going to talk to us about Sound County Area Transportation Board Agreement.
Yes, good evening. I am a poor substitute for Rick, so don't ask me anything too difficult.
I think we're just gonna approve $100, right?
Let's see, hold on. I have to hit the share screen thing. All right. There we go. Start the slideshow. All right. Good evening, Chair Doby, committee members, Council President Honda, council members. I'm here to present the South County Area Transportation Board, and it is affectionately called Skateboard, so that's what I'll be referring to it from here on out. Policy question: should council approve the updated agreement for the city's participation in the South County Area Transportation Board? So the purpose of Skateboard is that it represents agencies with responsibilities for all modes of transportation in South King County. It provides a forum for all interagency cooperation. They do lobbying at the county, state, and federal levels. They represent agencies with responsibilities. Oops, next one. That is the area that also represents for transit, so King County Metro and Sound Transit. And then they're also part of Puget Sound Regional Council selection process for regional distribution of federal funds for transportation projects. So the agreement is pretty much an update of past agreements. It talks and cleans up the coordination with the other two sub areas, which is Seashore, which stands for Seattle and Shoreline, and then the East Side Transportation Partnership. There's some streamlined language and eliminated some redundancies. And for your information, Renton, who actually borders both the South County agencies and the East Side agencies, decided to pull out of the South County agencies and only participate in the East Side Transportation Partnership. So the options considered is to approve the proposed agreement, or option 2, do not approve the proposed agreement and provide direction to staff. Mayor recommends option 1 and goes to the consent agenda on March 18th, and happy to answer any questions. And Rick
Councilmember.
always provides a really cool.
Councilmember Honda?
So I'm chair of Skateboard this year, and this agreement is an updated agreement that we worked on. All the cities need to ratify it in all of the transportation boards, and then it goes to King County Council and they have to agree to it. So we're looking for every city to just not make any changes in this, because we worked really hard to get everyone happy with it. And the $100 is just a small fee that would cover in-person meetings and any incidentals we have to run the meetings with. So I would encourage you all to support this and move it forward so we can get to King County Council and get it over with.
Just one comment, this is a great board to join because it's only $100. Councilmember Walsh?
I move to forward the proposed agreement to the March 18, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second it.
And
All in
hopefully that
favor?
doesn't break our budget, so.
Yeah, I think we got this budgeted. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, you're anticipating item F, right? The Title 18 Annual Code Clarification Cleanups, Corrections, and Consistency Amendments. Mr. Lewis. And you get to do item G also, right?
That's correct.
All right.
Good evening, council. This and the next agenda item are ordinances providing code clarifications, cleanups, corrections, and consistency amendments to Federal Way Revised Code Titles 18 and 19. So as staff review projects, we find development regulations that have errors, that have inconsistencies with state law, inconsistencies with our longstanding practices and code interpretations. and also wording that confuses staff and applicants and sometimes can lead to inconsistencies in how code is enforced and applied. And we internally refer to these code cleanup efforts as our snowball ordinances because once we start them, they rapidly grow in size like a snowball rolling down a hill. And this, what's before you tonight, is actually less than a third of our total snowball list. So we'll be back this fall, hopefully, with our next snowball ordinance, and probably not too deep into 2026 with our other one after that. Tonight's has 17 amendments, so we'll just cover those 4 from Title 18 to start. Policy question is whether City Council should amend Federal Way Revised Code Title 18 to improve its consistency, clarity, and accuracy for the purpose of correcting errors, complying with state law, improving clarity and consistency, and reducing ambiguity. The first snowball amendment deals with one of the criterion for approving boundary line adjustments. So criterion number 5 currently says BLAs shall not circumvent city code requirements associated with a land division approval or an obligation to pay latecomer fees. And the code amendment provides a more specific but still non-inclusive list of city requirements that BLAs shall not circumvent, and also which may be required as a condition of approval on the boundary line adjustment. This specificity should help clarify whether a BLA is or isn't in violation or circumventing our code requirements, and also when BLAs are proposed, or specifically for the situation of when BLAs are proposed concurrent with a subdivision application. So this criterion has caused some confusion on applications where we see a subdivision application and also a BLA that establishes the parent parcels for that subdivision. So adding more specificity will actually clarify some of the issues that we've had in those situations. The next deals with our plat alterations code. We found that parts of our plat alteration code are inconsistent with the state subdivision law, RCW 5817. And we also hadn't yet codified an option to streamline decision-making for plat alterations. So unless a member of the public specifically requests a public hearing on a plat alteration, state law allows us to say in our code that the default decision maker would be staff level as opposed to the hearing examiner. So this code amendment also ensures that the default decision maker is the community development director, unless somebody from the public in response to the public notice says, I want a hearing, and then we'll take it to a hearing at that point. That should speed up the process for reviewing these. The next deals with how we transmit technical review letters to applicants for projects. So the date that we send a technical review letter asking for corrections or additional information, that starts a 180-day clock, after which we can expire the application. The problem is our code says we have to mail those letters, and our main method of communicating with applicants is by email. So this just changes the words by mail to in writing, which should save us hundreds of unnecessary mailings per year and be consistent with how we have long communicated with our applicants. And lastly, most of our subdivision design criteria are in Title 18 subdivision code, but we have this one rogue section that exists in Title 19. And so this amendment just simply moves those cluster subdivision criteria from Title 19 to where all the other ones are in Title 18. In doing so, we're also deleting one of those requirements for cluster subdivisions, that garages shall be provided for all residential lots except if the lot's in a multifamily zone. Because of a state law that amended GMA last year, that is now inconsistent with state law. So this actually went to a public hearing last year, and we hope it's on track for adoption by April of this year. We had one public comment from the State Department of Commerce, and that is in your packet. And here are the criteria for approving development regulations, and the staff report outlines how all of these are met. And the Planning Commission recommended approval, and the mayor recommends approval. Are there any questions on the Title 18 ordinance before taking action and going to the Title 19?
I see none. Should we vote on it right now? And
I think that's the order, since it's a separate agenda item.
do I have a motion?
Could I ask a question?
Oh, I
Rick?
didn't see
Real-
your-
Just a
you
small
can.
one. What was the Department of Commerce recommendation? What did they want?
So they actually called out the garage issue
Oh, the
that was
garage.
deleted. There were a couple other issues that were in their letter, but the one that actually resulted in us changing the code was, by the way, this law passed last year, so you should change the code. So that was good information and helpful.
Okay.
actually, just one question before I make the motion. With the one that makes it so the director makes the decision unless it's a public contested and it goes to the hearing examiner, is that going to help save some money on the hearing examiner also?
It should. We see very few plat alteration applications. I mean, we'll potentially see more in the future, but yeah, for when that comes up, it should save that money.
Okay, sounds good. I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the first reading on March 18, 2025.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll move to item G, ordinance Title 19, Annual Code Clarification, Cleanups, Corrections, and Consistency Amendments, also known as snowballs.
So this is part 2 for Title 19, same topic, same policy question, and same purpose. So the first 2 are quite simple. They simply adopt in our code language that's verbatim from state law. One adds a state-required statement about property valuation that we need to include in all of our land use decisions. And there were 2 of our land use processes that didn't require this, and so we're just adding this state-required language into the sections of code that address those land use processes. And the second is verbatim language from the Growth Management Act that says we need to ensure the size and quality of affordable units is consistent with market rate units. That's actually a paraphrasing, but the specific language from state law is now in our code. Just if we have that 4% affordable housing requirement, those units have to be comparable in size and quality to those of market rate units. The next is the exact same one regarding the design criteria from Title 18, but it's simply recognizing that that also requires an amendment to Title 19. And same with the one about mailing review letters. We're doing the same change for our land use processes in Title 19 as we did with our Title 18 applications. So the next clarifies the permit process for severe weather and disaster shelters. So it clarifies the definition for severe weather and disaster shelter and establishes that those, or clarifies that those are temporary uses. So if, for example, if we ever saw a warming or cooling center application, we would process those as temporary uses, and they'd fall under the severe weather and disaster shelter definition. The next clarifies that building facades are any building face and not just the front face. So all of our design guidelines were written with the intent that by default they would apply to all building faces unless, and this unless happens a lot in our code, unless the code specifically says that it's just building faces that are visible from the public right-of-way or adjacent to public right-of-ways. But the default is that if it's a building face, it refers to all sides of the building. That wasn't quite clear in the definition. So the definition change just changes the word front to face to make that more clear. The next deals with how we designate the front property line for corner lots, particularly corner lots that are adjacent to only a principal collector or an arterial road. So right now, our code says that if you have a corner lot, in designating the front property line, and that's an important designation because that's usually the strictest setback, that is based on the primary vehicle access. But it also says you cannot designate the primary vehicle access along either a principal collector or an arterial, which creates an impossible situation to designate the front. So the code amendment just fixes that situation so we can designate the front and clarifies how we designate the front for corner lots along those types of streets. And it also ensures that the city, not just the applicant, can designate that front property line in those situations. The next clarifies permit review processes for improvements on already developed sites, which can differ in some cases from review processes for undeveloped and vacant sites. So this is a very confusingly written section of our code, and it's required us to rely on some internal interpretations on how to interpret and apply it. So the amendments clarify that over a certain size threshold, the required review process for improvements to develop sites just and if they're exempt from SEPA environmental review, then we just go back to the land use process chart that we would apply to anyone who's coming in and wanting to propose a use on a given parcel. So it eliminates some of the confusion that we've had in just interpreting this section. The next simply ensures consistent notice board requirements for all of our land use permits that require notice boards, because they were not consistent, and that led to some confusion as well. The next deals with what are a few optional provisions for lot size averaging in subdivisions that occur on slopes over 15%. Specifically to minimize clearing and grading requirements for those sloped areas. So the issue here was these code requirements fell under a section that said basically this whole section is encouraged, but some of the sub-bullets read as though they were required. So as not to interpret those as requirements under basically what's an optional section of code, this amendment just clarifies that the sub-bullets are optional, basically using the word should rather than shall, and that should clarify any confusion and make sure that we're not imposing a requirement on somebody that is not in fact a requirement. The next makes it clear that required landscaping in multifamily zones only needs to be in its own tract when there's a subdivision. So if it's a multifamily subdivision, rather than multifamily proposal that's all on one parcel. And that probably sounds obvious, but the way this section of code was written, it wasn't really obvious. And so this just makes it crystal clear. If you require landscaping, that landscaping only has to be in its own tract if you're already proposing that multifamily as part of a multifamily subdivision. So the next makes it, so back up, our code says that within a setback, or we also refer to as a yard, fences cannot exceed 6 feet in height. What's caused some confusion is when you have a fence that is close to a retaining wall, and at what point do we count the retaining wall and the fence heights together? So an example like the picture on top, this is probably a more clear-cut case where you just have a fence that's directly on top of a retaining wall. And we've interpreted that as those two heights are added together. And so if together those are over 6 feet, then that's over the limit for fences within a setback. What's caused some more confusion is when you have a fence that's close to a retaining wall. So we've relied on an internal interpretation on how to say that a fence is too close to a retaining wall, and then therefore you have to add the height of the retaining wall together with the fence to determine whether the fence height is more than 6 feet within the setback. So the amendment says that rockeries and retaining walls and the fence height are combined when they are within 5 feet of each other within a setback. And so that should clarify some of the uncertainty around what that specific distance is before we have to add the two heights together. The next just ensures consistent minimum ground floor retail depth limits between zones. So we have 3 zones that set depth restrictions as far as how deep in the building the ground floor retail can be, but they were inconsistent between RM, BC, and BN zones. So this just makes those requirements consistent. I think there's just 2 more. So right now in our code, applicants can request a reduction in their off-street parking requirements if they do a parking study, but there's no specificity on what needs to be in that study or other criteria or who the decision maker is. So this amendment just says who needs to prepare the study, a qualified ITE professional, what needs to be in the study, and it actually specifies the Public Works Director as the decision maker for those requests. And lastly is the last amendment clarifies a vague reference in our code to parking lot design standards. There's been some unclarity at times about what those standards are, where they exist, and whether they're enforceable. They all exist, they are enforceable, and they all exist outside of our code in a handout that exists on the Permit Center webpage. But the vague language referring to that handout is now a specific reference to that handout, so there's no question about its enforceability and where it is found. So this is On the same adoption process that I covered before, and that one public comment from Department of Commerce, same development regulation criteria, and the recommendation from Planning Commission and the mayor is approval. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, just one question. Going back to the retaining wall one, so the combined retaining wall and fence cannot be over 6 feet
Correct, within a setback.
within a,
So outside of the setback, it can be over that. Sometimes it triggers a building permit, but there's no height restrictions. We're just
well,
talking
what
about within the
is,
setback.
what is the height that a retaining wall can be?
Within a setback, I believe it's 6 feet, but there's criteria to even allow it to be six. Like there is a section of our code that says, here are exceptions to our setback requirements and what can be in the setback. I'll have to, and that's separate from the fence requirement. I believe it's 6 feet, but I'll have to double check. But the question that has come up is when you have a retaining wall and a fence that is close together within the setback, at what point visually does it just look like one giant fence and we have to limit the height?
Now, would that include just a retaining wall and fence between two residential lots? Or is this?
It would, yeah, if that was within the setback of those lots. Typically, in that situation, it would be a side or a rear setback.
So basically, what my question is, or what I'm getting at, is say if it were, an area where there's a larger retaining wall is required, say it's a 4 or 5 foot retaining wall, and the building setback's only 5 feet on the side, but any fence needs to be more than 6 feet from the retaining wall?
It would have to be at least more than 5 feet from the retaining walls for those two heights to not be added together.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is if you had a 5 foot retaining wall, you wouldn't be able to have any type of fence there, and say if it was in a residential area, I mean, a kid could come falling off the retaining wall because there's not a fence to restrict it.
Yeah, that is a scenario that could occur. And I mean,
Sounds like it's a problem.
Well, one solution there is you could have a slightly shorter retaining wall, and then if you wanted more fence and less retaining wall, you would just need a shorter retaining wall in that case. Unless, I mean, that's also a situation where we do still have a variance provision in our code, an administrative variance for deviating by 25%, and then the full-blown like hearing examiner variance for further deviations.
I think it's a pretty easy modification to code to have an exception that's specific for when health or safety or something like that would be negatively impacted by that regulation. I think we can get that added.
Yeah, I'm just thinking at my own house. I mean, it doesn't quite, if the lot level between my house and the next one were an additional foot, it would run into this and put you, anyway, so.
Yeah, we'll have that change for first read.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Honda?
Oh, it's already on, thank you. So for the retail depth, so when they're building out the bottom floor for retail, is it required to put in infrastructure so that it could be a restaurant?
Is it required, that goes slightly beyond the scope of this particular amendment.
Okay.
But are you referring, like, what, are you talking about, like frontage improvement requirements along?
No,
or-
like exhaust through the building for a commercial hood.
Oh, I don't think our zoning code goes into that level of detail. That would maybe be more of a building code situation.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna go back to the wall. So if I have a retaining wall and I add this up, I might only be able to get a 4-foot fence. And, maybe it's not safety, I just don't want people looking into my yard. I mean, it just seems, why do we do this? This is like, why is this important to say you can only have 3 feet and 4 feet to make 7 feet? Why are we limiting it? And also, we had that, Charlie Brown came and talked about walls and fences, and is that somewhere in the next snowball process we're gonna talk about, or? July, I just wanted to make sure, okay, it's July, I got that. What's that? It's coming, okay. But is this just because of looks, or why are we
I think
doing
that,
this?
a primary reason is aesthetics. If you look at that top picture, you can see how we can end up with a bunch of like mini fortresses everywhere, just driving down the road and it's just giant walls.
But it's their
because we
property,
have-
it's their property, they should be able to do something with it. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, the main reason is likely aesthetics.
Aesthetics.
Yeah, I mean, we could go back and look at
And we
the
can go
original
back.
intent of that code requirement.
Yeah, I can just speak to that a little bit. I think most jurisdictions have fence height limits for residential areas, and I think it's exactly what Evan just said, which is it's based on aesthetics. It's to prevent the spite fence, right? Like to prevent the 12-foot thing between the neighbors that are constantly feuding. Whether or not that's a good idea, I leave up to you guys, but I think that's generally why most jurisdictions have it.
I get that, but most time you have a retaining wall is because you've got a grade issue, or, you want to fill in your backyard so it's flat. I mean, then this makes it so you can't really do that and have a fence that gives you the privacy that's not spite.
To quote Robert Frost, good fences make good neighbors.
That would-
To the extent that we already have a limit on fence heights, so that already exists in our code, and that's something that can be.
6 or 7 feet or whatever. it
Yeah,
is, right?
6 feet within the setback.
Yeah.
So as long as we have that, this is just addressing the issue that I think has come up quite frequently, where somebody just has a fence on top of or very close to a retaining wall, and it's like, well, at what point are those the same height? So it maybe is a separate discussion around the validity of having the fence height requirement, but as long as we have it, when it's close to a retaining wall, we have to be able to enforce the code. So this helps us
Yeah.
enforce the code.
But like on Highway 99, where we come north on Highway 99, we have a retaining wall and a fence on top of it that was put there so the neighbors didn't have to look at the road. Is that 6 feet? Or is that in the code now, or are they gonna have to tear all that down and we're gonna have to put new fencing?
If that was in the public right of way,
Well, no,
then that
it's-
would not apply, because there would not be a setback, so.
Okay, so that fence that we had to fight over years ago to make those condos so people couldn't see the road fits this rule?
Well, even if it doesn't, so long as it's not taken down and abandoned, in other words, as long as it's not taken down and they don't replace it, it would be legally non-conforming, so it's not going to be phased out or have to be taken down as a result of this code amendment.
Okay, Councilmember Walsh?
Yeah, well, one thing that there could be, as I say, there could be some code compliance. It creates challenges with code compliance. If you have the retaining wall, the fence is 6 feet in, and then the residence is over here, I've seen all too often where a fence is off of the property line, and this area of the property between it and the right-of-way is neglected, and weeds and whatever else grows up there because they're not dragging their lawnmower, half a block down to get to the other side of the fence to address it. And so anyway, it seems like there's, that we don't want code compliance officers having to go out and say, hey, you gotta take care of your property on the other side of the fence. Anyway, that's a potential problem that I see.
Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah, in 2024, how many items came up that were underneath of this potential issue?
I can think of one. I think there was one particular violation that came about from a neighbor complaint. I think it was against an HOA or maybe it was vice versa, the HOA against the neighbor.
I'm sure it's
Anyway,
HOA.
that was over this fence height issue within a setback. But we definitely get a lot of inquiries about this situation. I mean, we could go query our code enforcement files and see.
One pops up like strong memory of one.
One in particular.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm not
It's-
seeing all of them.
Since I deal with this a bit too, because I deal with it on the code enforcement side as well, it's a handful of times a year at least.
Okay. And then my question is, just to make sure I understand in clarity, anybody who wants to listen in, when you say setback, I have the main road, I'm not allowed to build my house unless I'm a setback a certain amount of space from the main road, correct?
It's from the property line.
Property line, okay. So in this scenario, it's, if I'm putting a fence anywhere in between that space, I can do it up to 6 feet, correct? If it's outside that space, it's close to the house, there's no, the limitation. for
Correct,
taking
yep,
off?
the height limit is just within the setback. Outside of that, there's no height limit. There is a limit, over 7 feet, we require a building permit, but there's no height limit. So yes, that's correct.
And then in this scenario, if I'm 5 feet setbacks, it's 5 feet, I have my retaining wall, and it's another 5 feet, then I have my fence, right? And they technically both can be 6 feet at that point?
Yep,
Okay,
as long as they're 5 feet or more apart.
gotcha. I'm personally all about my personal property being my personal property, but I could see this being a pain in the butt
Yeah.
for people. Thank you.
I have one more question. Let's say that I don't have a retaining wall, but from the street, my property line, my property kind of goes up like this, 3 feet. You know, I have a rolling dirt mound, and I put a fence on the top of that dirt mound. Do we count from the road up the dirt pile to the fence?
I believe it's from
Or
finished
it's, but it's
grade.
not a retaining wall, it's just the way the grade is.
Yeah, it's from a finished grade, so probably, I think in that case, it would be the point that the point where the fence hits the ground and up, that would be the fence height.
Okay, from the fence up, we wouldn't count the 3-foot grade up to that point.
Unless the grade would fall under the definition of a rockery or retaining wall.
No, just, you know, I can think of, I can think of a street in my neighborhood where the road's here and they graded it up like this. There's fences along that grade, and we got Jack Walsh's, let's not mow that area, let's grow pumpkins. And so that would be fine, people could do that.
Yep.
Okay.
there.
Huh?
You could put an ADU there.
I could put it a small, we could have a midget one.
Hey,
Okay.
Another question. Okay, we've been visualizing this as the retaining wall is, basically, we're looking at this
It's
from
an expensive retaining wall.
Street view.
Yeah, the top one's probably from the street.
Okay, from the street view. Suppose that somebody has a lot and they are down lower and they need a retaining wall here, the street's over here, the retaining wall is here, and they have say a 5-foot retaining wall, yet people over here can look straight into their backyard. It's not 6 feet total on the street side, but it's potentially more than 6 feet on the house side. Would that be included in this or not?
This, I don't think solves for that particular situation, but that already is an issue in our current code. That, right now, if there is a private property that is below the grade of the road, I think is what you're describing.
Right.
There's already that 6-foot height limit for the fence within the setback. So I think what you're getting at is probably a bigger issue if we wanted to unpack the nuances and how to address different scenarios like that within our existing fence code. But
Actually,
that kind of-
if I could just jump in, Evan, I think that's a classic example of where somebody could apply for a variance from the city and get approved, because in order to get a variance, which basically means you have to, you get to modify the code somehow, you have to demonstrate that there's something topographically unique about your property that warrants that variance. That circumstance you just described is exactly the type of thing that would probably get you a variance. I have a property that's below street level, it's sunk down, therefore I need a variance from this combined wall plus retaining wall issue, because I have to have a retaining wall because my property's so sunk down. You could likely obtain a variance in that situation. So I think that one's probably decently dealt with in existing code.
And can that variance be from the director or whatever? It doesn't need to go to a hearing examiner for that type of.
Yeah, so the way our variances work is up to a certain percentage. If you're trying to modify up to a certain percentage of a number, it's administrative. It's a director decision. Once you get, I think it's about 25%, is that right?
Yeah.
If you're up above 25% of a measurable standard, then you have to go to the hearing examiner.
Okay.
Councilmember Daniel?
just to beat this thing to death, grandfather clause, if this passes, is there a grandfather clause, or is anybody who's in this current situation who gets reported going to have to tear
So,
the fence down?
yeah, it's a great question. So whenever we change code, unless there's something in the code that explicitly says everybody currently existing is now phased out and you have to comply with the new law, unless it says that, the default is that you get to be grandfathered in.
Okay.
And so this one does not have any explicit phase-out clause. So yes, you get to be legally non-conforming. It's the same situation as a question from a little bit earlier. Unless you take down your fence and don't rebuild it at all, you're going to be grandfathered in and okay.
Okay.
Hey,
I have one question, though.
yes, Councilmember Honda.
So if you're in this situation and the fence has to be replaced, how long do you have to replace it before you have an issue?
I believe, I'm talking off the top of my head, I believe it's that our abandonment requires, I think it's, the property owner has to intend to abandon it. I believe it might even be a year.
Oh, okay. Long
So
time.
it's pretty hard to lose your non-conforming status
Okay.
in the city of Federal Way.
Thank you.
Okay. that's-
All right, I opened a can of worms there. So anyway, but I move to forward the proposed ordinance, the first reading, March 18, 2025.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move to our favorite topic sometimes, progress and update of Sound Transit projects in Federal Way.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, good evening. Ken Smith with the City of Federal Way Public Works Department. I'm here for the update on sound transit activities at Federal Way. So for everything north of 317th, so north of the town center, they're doing some haul route restoration on a portion of Starlick Road and Military Road. Right now, I think it's just working on some curb ramps that eventually will be overlays. There's some comms, electrical testing, live wire testing, and adjustments, and then punch list items are finishing up along the corridor, so most of the rail area. Final frontage improvements is ongoing along Military Road South. I believe they're waiting for some utilities to go in before they put in the streetlights. Still some storm pond work and emergency access work. And then traffic mitigation project is ongoing. They're getting ready to do some walls that go in adjacent to the right-of-way. For the city center, work for the remaining splitter islands and the center island for the new roundabout at 23rd and 317th is underway. That it is currently in the roundabout configuration if you drive through there. So it's been a little bit of an adjustment. I think they've been working through some of the signage to make sure that it's clear, but it does function as a roundabout right now. Final sidewalk, landscaping, and other ADA improvements are going in along 22nd Avenue, 319th, and South 318th, which are the new roads going adjacent to the bus loop. Construction of the bus loop ongoing with installation of site lighting and some of the final decorative concrete paving. All that is expected to be complete by the end of March. I'll touch on that a little later. Station work is continuing. They're doing elevator testing and inspections and a lot of systems testing and inspections as they're getting ready to finish up that work. Artwork is expected mid-March. They're still working on getting their building permits, but they do have the pieces fabricated and ready. And the first one is the high five structure, I believe, is going to go back in within a couple weeks, and then the new Donald Lipsky piece should go in right around the same time.
In a couple weeks?
Yeah, that's the expectation. They still do not have their building permit, but once they do, it'll be probably within a couple weeks of that. Final site work for the end-of-line facility, the bus driver relief facility, and the garage, nearly complete. They're doing some final punch list work, and then various systems testing and inspections as well similar to what they're doing for the station. And then bus service is expected to switch from the current location where it's at in the transit center to the new bus loop at the end of March. I believe it's the 29th of March is the date, which will allow the new construction of 317th to take place and the demolition of the old transit center bus stop area. For the operations and maintenance facility south, we're just continuing to work on the development agreement, not a giant update since the last time. Working on the vacation process for the portion of 20th Avenue South in the vicinity of the facility, and then just working with Sound Transit BPA and the city for the city center access coordination. And I don't have anything significant for Tacoma Dome Link extension. We're just waiting to hear back from them after submitting comments to the DEIS. And I'll answer any questions.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah. Hey, on the Tacoma Dome Link extension, you know, with the 4 routes, you know, it sounds to me like there's really no reasonable possibility that it will be one of the freeway routes. Am I correct in that?
That's essentially what they told us, other than their typical that we're waiting to hear back from the board. So based on what they've told us, we'll get a really good indication when they decide on the preferred alternative. I believe it's going to be probably like June, but sometime in that timeframe, we'll really know their idea of what the route probably will be. So
Okay. But almost certainly it'll be one of the pack highway routes. Okay.
Councilmember Daniel.
Yeah. Has there been any conversations, or do you know any concerns about running out of money before the project is done?
I have not heard anything.
Which project are you referring to?
Even opening up the downtown 320th location?
They have all the funding cash in hand for that project. That was
They
one
do?
of the- Yeah, that was one of the conditions before they were allowed to start from FTA. So the Federal Way Link project, they have all cash on hand, outside of like some major catastrophe with unexpected costs beyond what they've encountered.
What about the next 2 locations in Federal they're planning?
So they have the same conditions from FTA, that they have to have cash on hand to complete them. That's the standard FTA.
So before they can start, they have to have the money? So we're not going to have to worry about the locations being torn apart before they actually have full funding in hand?
In theory, that's correct, yes. I work for the city, not Sound Transit, so I can't make you a promise on that one, but
Yeah.
that is correct. I'm going to use the word challenge with the way the ST3 ballot measure was written and approved, is that if the projects come in more expensive, it doesn't mean they don't proceed. They basically just keep collecting the car tabs at the same rate until they do have enough cash on hand to complete them. So that is the entire conversation of the delaying some of the projects from 2035 to 2038. It's really about letting cash accrue for 3 additional years. So the way the ballot measure was passed by the voters, there's not a world in which the projects don't get built. There's a world in which they don't get built on the timeline because basically they just collect more money so they do have enough money to build them.
Gotcha. And then I assume then with that understanding, there's not a whole lot of demand for federal funding for this project then?
So they do have a lot of federal funding for the Federal Way Link project that's under construction right now. The OMF projects typically, the maintenance facility projects Sound Transit does typically see a lower level of federal funding anyway because the federal funding is really tied to mass transportation. And it's not a transit project if you're building a maintenance facility. So I would assume they probably will apply for grants, but they haven't conveyed to us that they have any doubt in the level of funding that they're expecting coming out for any of the future projects. For the Federal Way Link project, the West Seattle project, the project going further north towards Everett, I mean, all those projects are still multiple years away, if not, decades away. So the local, or sorry, not local, the short-term politics, at least from the big picture, they don't believe play into it quite as much because frankly, most of these projects aren't going to be built in the next 4 to 8 years. They're going to be built further out than that. So, who knows what happens at the federal level between now and then, but it's, there's not really mass alarm because of that reason, frankly.
Well, I don't feel comfortable with the state level either, but that's another story.
Well, but so all the above. I mean, we can roll the state, the Fed, the whole 9 yards. I mean, they're not looking at building these projects in any of the current elected officials, state, Fed, any of them, current terms.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So when the public art goes in and it looks like things are, moving along, could council get a walkthrough of the site? Because I know the mayor's had one, but we talk about it every month, we drive by it all the time. It would be great to be able to go in and see the work being done and see where it's at.
Yeah, I can reach out to Sound Transit. I'm sure they'd be happy to do a tour.
That would be great, thank you.
Council President?
When will the lamp be going, the Tiffany lamp, when will that be?
That's the one, they still do not have their building permit for the foundation, but I'm expecting mid-March, so it may be near the end of March, but based on once they get the permit, but they just need to schedule their crew.
Okay, and would you remind me, what is the date that we're expecting for the the south station around the Costco area?
For the construction of the South Station? That's the 2038 timeframe for.
38?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other,
One last, I mean, they're still, it's from what the report is for the Federal Way link. I mean, it sounds like they're still on schedule for a little more than a year from now for opening it.
Yeah, that's the expectation. They're looking to have basically everything complete by the end of this year. And then it'd be a lot of testing and commissioning to make sure that the drivers know what they're doing and everything's working correctly in time for June of '26.
Okay. Right, thank you.
good. Okay, seeing no more questions, thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
Is there anything else anybody would like to bring up? Seeing none, we will adjourn.